Hello, brothers and sisters, and welcome to The Last Ego on Earth. My name is James Scott Shoemaker, and I'd like to welcome you guys to episode 88 here on The Last Ego on Earth. Today, we're going to be taking a look at a conversation with Stephen Dean, with myself and my co host, Stephen Gable. We had a wonderful conversation with Stephen Dean. Stephen Dean is a teacher of A Course in Miracles. He's really knowledgeable about it. I was so impressed by his teaching. I kind of got mesmerized by it. I found him on YouTube, I don't know, about a year or two ago. And he has such wonderful stories, kind of metaphors that he comes up with for the Course. And just so knowledgeable. And I really enjoy his teaching, his method, I guess I would say. And I think you will too. This is when I was inspired to bring Stephen Dean on, I knew that this would probably be several videos. So this is part one. It happened exactly how I thought. I knew that we were going to start probably talking with him, and it was just going to keep on going. And that's the truth. We have so much to say and so much to share. So I'm looking forward to part two, part three, part four. I'm not quite sure how far we'll go, but we will. We'll just see what Spirit has for us. But I'm glad you're here. I hope you enjoy it. I do want to make a disclaimer real quick. Stephen Gable, co-host, didn't get to say too much this time, but I know on the next one we'll get him involved in the conversation. It's just kind of funny at the end. We kind of make a joke about that, but we both Stephen Gable and I had so many things to say afterwards after we did speak with Stephen Dean. So hope you enjoy this. Peace be with you. I love you, and I will see you guys on the other side. All right, guys, take care.
Forget. Okay. Okay.
Hey, hello, Stephen Dean. How are you?
Hey, I'm absolutely fine. So I'm glad to be here. How you doing yourself?
Oh, we just got off a wonderful Zoom call meeting, and it was just really lovely because when we do our Zoom call meetings, we let Spirit guide it,
Right.
and it was really coming from a place of really big stuff that was that's been happening in the world, and
Okay.
I don't think Stephen or I knew that's what the conversation was going to be headed towards, with some deep-rooted like letting go of fear and forgiveness of the world right now. But we were just discussing how those things are a wonderful moment of letting go. When these big things do come in front of us, we know that they're a gift now from the Holy Spirit to be let go.
The test just gets bigger and bigger as we get to the final exam, so to speak, and at the moment
Yes.
the pressure is really on. I mean, this being the opposing world to the world of love, of course there's going to be fear here, and it keeps trying to promote it all the time. As being in a world of separation, by nature it keeps separating and separating and separating. It reaches a sort of a happy medium, then goes whizzing past it as it separates into an extreme until it eventually just all gets convoluted and clogs everything up. And this happens to everything in this world. And at the moment, we're seeing that, like the total, like the conclusion of something that's been going on throughout the history of the world, the illusory world. And that's why we're here, actually, to give it a full-time forgiveness, like full-on forgiveness for something that's a really head-on fear factor.
Exactly.
I was saying to my wife about it, we keep track of it because we feel like, I've got a part to play in all this, as you have, and I no doubt Stephen has there, and we know we have. So we keep tracking to see exactly when we come into this, because there's actually, the world has been in a state of imbalance for too long. When it first came about, there was a kind of golden age where we knew more or less what we were. But it's so easy to forget in a world like this, isn't it? Which seems so real. That was a tiny mad idea, us thinking this was real. And once that happened, then we were lost in it. And that's when all this stuff started to happen. It's only waking up to realise that we should have realised it was a tiny mad idea.
Totally.
Instead of sort of like just going along with it, But that's what's happened. And it's really, I was saying to my wife, within our home and what we do, we're very, very happy. all this stuff, really, we're inviting it in by looking on the media and every day. But if we didn't have any of those things, apart from having to wear masks up the store, we wouldn't really have a lot of idea what was going on about it, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah. That's what my wife and I do. My wife and I don't watch the news, but of course you get enough on social media and things like that. But
exactly.
Yeah, but we embrace it now. You know, we see it as a gift from Holy Spirit, because, you know, we know that Holy Spirit is usurped the ego's script. So now it's just the let go. You know, we're letting go of these moments that feel bad, you know, feel hurt, you know, the separation thoughts, the pain, the sicknesses of the world. This is the great, you know, awakening to who we really are by letting go of those false narratives. And I see them as gifts now, you know, and you talked to me probably 3 or 4 years ago, I don't think I would have to the extent that I do now. And that's what's so beautiful by going through what I have. I mean, I know that I haven't really shared my story with you, Steve, but 10 years ago, I was at a really tremendous fear state before the course came to me. And that was during the recession time here in America, where people were losing their homes. I was about to lose my home. I was about to lose my family. So I thought, you know, the ego had me deep down in the gook, you know, of fear. And it was kind of a precursor to this time now, you know, just having that fear, you know, I'm going to lose this, I'm going to lose that. I'm going to, you know, that was what the ego was telling me. But when I got to the point, and it had been a progression, I know that I'm really interested to hear your story, Steve, too.
Okay.
But I got to that point of, there's got to be a better way, that you hear of so many course people get to, where they're just like, I don't know what I'm doing anymore. Like, I hurt so much every day, and I'm in fear every day. You know, I went somewhere in my mind and said, I'm done with this. I don't know what I'm doing anymore. You know, I wasn't in control of this. And I said, Jesus, if you're real, I need help. That, you know, it's just like you see in the movies. And then the course showed up, you know, and it's like this miraculous blue book with golden letters shows up the very next day after that. And my journey began on that. And it was just a big yes in my heart, you know, in my mind, that this is what I need to be, what this is for me, you know. And that that time period was, you know, it says the trials and tribulations will show up again to be let go again.
Yeah.
And I feel that this time period that we're in now, 10 years later, I've been able to handle that for the other parts of the mind, and joining with the other parts of the Christ mind, you know, like having you here on a, you know, a conversation. You told me that 10 years ago, I would have thought that, you know, I'd be like, what, you know, because you see all these other teachers of the course per se that helps me through my awakening, that were there for me, like Ken Wapnick, Earl Purdy, Gary Renard, whatnot, and so on, you know, David Hoffmeister, all that. And they were all different flavors of what my mind needed to hear to heal, you know. And it's just so amazing to be at the part of the atonement where here I am now discussing like one-on-one with brothers and sisters, you know, and it's what a beautiful, beautiful thing.
It was the same for me. And curiously enough, I can relate to your story there. 10 years ago, I was heavily into conspiracy theories, you know what I mean?
Yeah, me too.
I lived in the UK. I could see what was going on there, and you can easily research this stuff even at that time. And I found out all sorts of things, and I became very angry about and I wasn't so much fearful. That what I was angry through fear, because is this true? Fear. I better deal with this anger.
Right.
I got in touch. David Icke, who's right into this sort of thing. I don't know if you've ever heard of David Icke. Yeah, well, he put it out there. He's looking for people to lead militant groups, and I was so militant, and I got in touch. Said, I'll put you in touch with like-minded people who live around you. And my sister, who lived another part of the UK, did the same. Well, he got back to me and he said, I found one person who lives in your city who's in what we are, and I'll give you her phone number. And I rang her up and we agreed I was married and she was married, and we were just like people who were sort of realised that something weird was going on. But being the only two people apparently in the city in touch with David Icke about it, we decided there wasn't much we could do except talk about it to people. In my sister's city, nobody. She was on her own. So I thought then, well, I was willing to lead a militant group against this. That's how I was. And I steadily got more frustrated with it all and angry with it all. And I realised, wait a minute. There's got to be more than this. This can't be the truth. For me to be so like all these nasty beings treating us like this. I mean, we're in some kind of hell, or I'm not understanding this right. You know, and then my first, a chance meeting with a medium, and she told me about something called asking the universe for things. You know, just ask the universe. And my first wife had died. I don't want to go into the story of my first wife, but anyway, she died quite recently when this came about, and I was really open to. She came back. I just digress to this bit.
Sure.
At the time when she was alive, she was originally a Roman Catholic, and I wasn't brought up to be religious, so I had to become a Catholic to get married in a Roman Catholic church and all that. And I embraced it for a while, but it was meant really because I got religion at the age of 23, and I went into it as an adult, and I could see the big holes in the doctrine and the dogma that I wouldn't have seen if I'd been brought into it and grown into it as a child.
Sure.
Like so many is, see. And anyway, so I embraced it for a while until I saw great gaping holes in it and abandoned it, looking for something better. Eventually, I come to the conclusion, because I've always been a deep thinker, that it was something to do with frequency. And like, if there is a heaven and a hell, it must be like that. Heaven must be on a high frequency and hell must be on a low one. Because if you vibrate at this high frequency, you must go to a heaven. You don't see the people down here because you're not on their frequency. Like a radio signal will only go to a certain radio station. And I had these ideas about it must be working something like that. And eventually, well, when my wife was dying of cancer, she said to me, tell you what, when I'm gone, because she knew she was going, she said, I'll come back and tell you if you're right or not. Well, 3 days after her death, she didn't come. She came back. We used to sit opposite each other in these chairs. And I was sitting there looking at a chair, and I'd just come back from the mortuary where she looked pretty bad they tried to make her look good, but her hair was falling out and all that. And I just sat down. I said, look, I've just been down the mortuary and, well, I suppose you look like an angel now. And she come flying out the chair, this cloud of love surrounding me. And it was like,
wow.
And it was tangible. Like I could talk and walk, could touch it. And I was surrounded in it, and the ecstasy was unbelievable.
Yeah.
And I could hear her saying she loved me, but she didn't say nothing about you're right or anything like that. But she didn't need to. I knew she'd come from somewhere. Do you know what I mean? And from then on, I wanted to know where she was. And when she faded away, I was trying to sort of pull her back, but there was nothing to pull. You know, God. But she showed me. And then on, I decided there's got to be something else, and it can't be all this. And, you know, anyway, going back to the asking the universe, I read somewhere, having had some success with asking the universe of physical things, I came across an article about light beings, and it said there's light beings walk the earth. You may be lucky enough to meet one. So I asked the universe if I could meet a light being. 3 weeks later, I met this woman who was she spoke of things. I met her at a holistic counselling college. That's another long story. And she started to tell me of things that I knew she was telling the truth, but I couldn't understand what she was saying. She was telling me, what she was actually doing was telling me passages from the Course in Miracles she'd learned. And telling me, and because I go, well, I knew she was telling me the truth, but my mind was trying to sort out what she was saying. But I knew I thought, yes, that sounds so feasible. And then she said to me, she told me about the Course in Miracles and gave me a copy and said, read this. I opened it, I read a couple of paragraphs, and I knew at that instant, not only did I have to learn it by heart, I had to teach it as well.
Yes, and that's what I
Same happened to you. And I gave her a copy back when I ordered mine from Amazon or whatever, and I got it back. I gave her a copy, and I've still got my old copy. I mean, to this day, my old copy, it's like,
that's what my wife looks just like that. I got to tell you a funny story, and some people already know this, but I actually burned my copy. There was a point in my awakening where some ancient stuff came up, and I burned all my spiritual books. Like, this can't be the truth, and the devil's coming after me. So
really?
I burnt my original. But I laughed it off with Jesus that very about 30, 40 minutes after I did it. It was like one of my spiritual sisters that actually gave me the book. I had called her recently, or like a little bit after I had burned everything, and she just started laughing on the phone. And my ego was like, "Why are you laughing at me?" She's like, "Oh, James," she's like, this is some ancient stuff, and like it just triggered me back into reality. And I was like, "Oh my God, I just burned, I don't know, $250 worth of books, I have accrued them all back, by the way. But it was what a wonderful lesson in letting go. Even 10 years ago, my entire old life fell away, and I was rebuilding everything, just like it says in the course. Everything will come back to you, in a new light, which it did. But even the books during that period had become a dogmatic thing for me. It had the spiritual ego kind of snuck in, and the fear, that ancient fear, was showing up for me to be let go, just like what's happening right now. But that very day, we kind of laughed it off, and of course I purchased a new copy, and I was right back on track right after that. But and then it's funny, since then I've spoken to many that have done the very same thing. They'll either put it on the bookshelf, they'll either throw it away, that kind of thing. But it was a great process, there was a fear in me that this might not be true or whatever it was, but it was a trick of the ego.
What I think, for each of us, it's slightly different, because we're different people due to our egoic upbringing. Now, our egoic experience, so we're all different. But everybody teaches their different way and understands it a different way. Like you said, like the different flavors of David and Ken Wapnick and that. For myself, I teach it as simply and as logically as possible, because I think it's important to understand how it works before you can believe in it. Because one of the problems I had with the church, not coming into the church late in my 20s, like the idea, I heard of Jesus and all that, read at school, like Jesus, baby Jesus and all that, but I didn't know a lot about what he did and what the idea of God was. But at the Catholic Church, they started teaching about this God who'd, I don't know, he puzzled me, this God they spoke about. Like he's supposed to be all loving, but he'll chuck us into lakes of fire, if we don't live up to his very exacting standards. So, well, wait a minute, he don't sound like an all-loving God to me. I don't want to chuck my children into the fire. And another thing that puzzled me, and further to that, what puzzled me was that, what is he chucking in the fire? When we die, my body's already cremated, so it's already been in a fire, or I'm buried. I don't have a body, I'm unseen spirit. So what's he throwing in the fire? So being of a logical mind, I thought, this God, the idea of still having a body in heaven just doesn't make sense, when you're unseen spirit. To me, I'm not saying it might be you get another body when you get there, but to me, logically, that didn't make sense. And what made least sense was an ever-loving God throwing his children in the fire. And I just couldn't get my head around this. A true God's got to be, and the God of the Course of Miracles is all-loving. Yeah. All this stuff about fires and doing such torturous things is all a result of the egoic thinking. And here, because it's a world of opposites, you're going to have you're going to have evil people and you're going to have loving people. It's the nature of this world, unfortunately. Yeah. But one of the difficulties of it all is that they're all underneath, they're all spirit, and this is the struggle, one of the great struggles we're having here. I think there's still going to be the awakening. We're very fortunate to be at the vanguard of this awakening. When you wake up in the morning, you don't say boof and you're awake. It's a slow thing, isn't it? And and on a celestial scale, we're actually awakening pretty quick, towards the end of all this. These past few years, it's been an acceleration. There's more children are being born with more spiritually aware. Some of these kids they call them crystal children or indigo children. I was told I was an indigo child by a medium, and that my wife was as well. I'll tell you, when I worked at a spiritual retreat in New Zealand, because I travelled a lot after my wife died. That's another story. And a famous medium in New Zealand came to the retreat, and I went in to see it, and I thought, well, I've never had much to do with mediums in my life, really. And but I thought, I'm not going to give anything away. I'm not going to skeptical, you know. But as soon as I walked in, she started saying to me, "You're telling me stuff that only I could have known, and this, that, and the other." She said, "You're surrounded by a huge multitude of angels because you're on a mission." And she said, and then she said, "When your wife died, she was taken, wasn't she?" And I looked at her, I thought, "How did you know?" What happened when Mary died? Right, Mary died. I was sitting by her bedside, and she was asleep. Her eyes were closed. And her sisters were sitting around the bed, and I was sitting next to her on the bedside, waiting for her to die. But she was apparently asleep. And then, because I was nodding off because I've been awake all night, and then one of her sisters shook me and said, "She's going, she's going." And I looked at her, and her eyes are open, and she was looking at something her eyes were focused on something above her. And then suddenly she put her hands up like that, and she reached out to something. And when she reached the top, her eyes sort of glazed over, and her arms come down really gracefully like that. And it was like something had just come and met her and took her away. Now,
Wow.
Yeah. And I said to her sisters, who are all nurses, I said, "Did you see that?" And the nurse went, yes, it always happens. But I think she dismissed it because, what do you mean it always happens? Then I said, okay, so it always happens? But she was just sort of calming me down, I suppose. I don't know, but she was taken. Now, how did that medium know that? Anyway, so I thought, oh my God. And then she said that you and your wife are indigo children. You're not reincarnated. You haven't been here before. You're here on a mission, and it will become apparent as you go on. You know, and she told me other stuff, and she told me she said that you'll meet a woman who's totally attuned to you, perfectly attuned to you, were her words. And that was in 2011. In 2016, I met Vic, and after I was traveling, I was an established traveler. I met Vic in America. I was living in Australia at the time because I was well into traveling. Another long story, but I met Texas Victoria, and I fell in love with her, and I ended up married her, and now I live in Texas. You see, but I didn't know that was going to happen. I had no intention or anything like that happened, and she is perfectly attuned to me.
Yeah.
So she told me I'm here to do something. That's why I just for the time being, I just keep making videos and posting them till whatever happens. You know.
Yeah, I some of those stories you're talking about being attuned to, my wife and I are the same way. Prior to the course coming, I was in a different relationship, and that everybody I knew didn't know of the course or what I was speaking of, and I was kind of running through like the town crier, trying to get everybody to get on my same page.
I was doing that. I even sent a couple of books to people.
Yeah. And
people I
of
thought
course,
would get it.
And it just gets rejected, right? The ego's like, no, you're crazy. And so I went through that refinement period, and looking back on it, I understand why I was missing the mark, per se. But what was so beautiful is this relationship did come from my wife now, and we were attuned in all ways, and Holy Spirit was showing me all the signs, and I'm sure you probably witnessed some of those too, like 111, our birthdays.
God, when that started, 111. I went through that period in Australia, and it was everywhere. I mean, you can't until you experience that, the 111 effect. You can't explain it.
It's a 111 right here, right now. I'm not even kidding. I just looked over.
Well, it's 311.
Okay. Yeah, it's 111 here. That was really weird. But anyway.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
I still see it. Totally. I still see it more often than not now. But there was a period when I was looking at it on signposts. I saw it twice in the clouds.
Yeah, me too. I would see it. Yeah. Yeah, like from the clouds from airplanes and stuff. It has three.
Everywhere. It's until you've experienced that, you can't. It sounds too incredible to be believed that I tell you what, I was playing Scrabble in Australia. I lived on a farm, and I was playing Scrabble with a farmer's partner, wife, and I got 3 eyes, right? 111, 3 eyes, and I couldn't get rid of them. I kept putting, they kept coming back again. At the end of the game, I was stuck with 3 eyes, and I thought, well, that is really peculiar. I've had 111 all the way through the game, and I couldn't get rid of it. I didn't say anything to her because she wasn't into A Course in Miracles or anything. She'd have thought I was just being silly about something. We played again the next day. The next day, when the game finished, she showed me. She said, "Look, I've got 3 eyes, same as you yesterday." She said, "I've had them all through the." She said, "I've had them all through the game." He said, "No, no." She said, "Isn't that funny? Is it funny?" I said, "You don't know how significant that is." True that. That's it.
Yeah.
He showed up in the weirdest places.
It did, and it still continues to this day. When my wife and I will take notice of it, and she'll text me or I'll text her, when we see it, and it's just a remembrance, And I know, we were just speaking of this in our last Zoom call, but Holy Spirit and Jesus puts landmarks in our mind of trust, and that's. Those 111s were speaking to you and me, right? At those moments, because we were like, this is beyond coincidence what's happening to me right now, and it started gaining that trust that there was something higher, a level higher than where I'm at.
Exactly, because they understand that situation. This, to the egoic world, it's real and there's nothing beyond it. You can't see past the screen. But he's got subtle ways of letting you know. I mean, like when I first started seeing it so often, I knew it was from it. It was actually some kind of message. But what? And Googling it and stuff like that. Doing some research on it. The best one I liked, the actual significance of it, is it's supposed to tell you that manifestation from mind to physical manifestation is quickening up. With the conclusion in order, so you can associate your mind with manifestation. You see, because like everything's just a manifestation of your mind, but you don't see it. I've often like projection and reflection. I've often found like the more fleeting the thought, like you might think about some breed of dog briefly, and the next day that breed of dog will walk past. Or you might think about some like a Lamborghini or something, then a Lamborghini drives past the next day. If you think about it only fleetingly, it projects back in the form it was thought in, so to speak. But anything dwelt on, what actually is reflected back is the emotion that was behind the thought. Like it's like angry people. They everything they see makes them angry. Like someone speaks to them and they get angry with them because they consider they've said something something to make them angry. But it's just their mind projecting anger everywhere, so they're seeing it everywhere. Right. And what Jesus is saying, like, before you wake up, if you're full of love and total love, that's all you're going to project, and it's all you're going to see.
Yeah, and that's the beauty in the first few lessons, is to get us out of that thought system that a cup on a table can make us upset. Like a wife could set a or what I'm saying, like set a cup on the table and you didn't put it to the dishwasher, and you're like, this rage comes over of a cup. It's like. What's that about? But yeah, Jesus is undoing that thought system of how can I be angry at a lamp, or angry at this or angry at that? The things that we have so invested with the ego that in somehow an object can be who I am. The projection outside of ourselves, and
it's like shaking your fist.
Freeing.
Like shaking your fist at the rain. It's just ridiculous. And I like there's a part in the course where he talks about the true meaning of charity. I made a video about this, that the true meaning of charity is to understand, like, you're awakened or the truth, whether you're awakened or not. But if you know the truth, then if your brother's getting angry with you, you give him charity by knowing that he doesn't know. You do.
Right.
He doesn't.
Right.
Understand that. Give him that charity. Yes. You don't give him charity by getting angry with him. You just give him understanding. That's it, because it's like when something like the old back in the old day. Before I come across A Course in Miracles, I knew my fair share of angry people, and and sort of like argumentative people. But as I progressed through the course, these people either sort of disappeared out of my life for some reason, or became nicer people. I perceived them to be nicer people. Years ago, I used to have a drink problem. I'm living in the UK. I mean, the UK's got a huge drink culture, and in the 70s, it was at its height, because then it was an economic boom in the UK in the 70s, because London being bombed flat, everything was bombed, that it took years to rebuild. So loads of money was poured in and everybody had money. So so everybody was always in the pub celebrating. So it ended up with a lot of sort of like alcoholic kind of inhabitants. And it's still carries that to this day, really, that hangover. And also they introduced ridiculous drinking hours, like from what was it again, 11 o'clock in the morning to 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and 5:30 to 10 o'clock at night. So everybody's drinking as fast as they can to fit them into these. They caused that. The government actually caused that problem, by not thinking it through, or did they think it through? But anyway, I don't want to
Or did they?
But I ended up with a big drink problem. I was a real party boy. I used to play in bands and everything. I was an actor for 12 years, and all these kind of things. There's lots of drinking and partying involved. And I used to drink hell of a lot, and all that. But I packed it in because it nearly killed me. But it was but it was the best thing I did, because I know what it's like to be an alcoholic. It was, and I tell you what happened when I did. Sometimes I talk so much I forget what I was going to say before that.
No, that's totally cool.
When I finally kicked it, I was told if I didn't stop, I'd die. And I thought, right, now being told that does you really inspires you to stop. Especially when they say it about a fortnight. They said my liver was so badly damaged, I had about a fortnight. So, okay. So I packed it in. When I packed it in, I went home, determined not to drink, and I went to bed, and I slept like I never slept in years. I was supposed to not been able to sleep at all, according to the bump, but I slept. And I felt this, and for mornings, I felt this golden ray going up and down me like I was being healed. And once I got over all the withdrawal and all the shakes and all that terrible stuff, I knew I was never going to drink again. It was like I'd been through a period in my life that I had to undergo.
Yes.
Because drinking opens you up to a kind of masonry. I lived in Scotland for a while, and I lived with a couple of they weren't down and out by normal standards, but down and out aristocrats. They were black sheep of their family who lived in a great big cottage on the coast of Findle, Scottish coast. I used to go to the Findle community there as well, which was a hippie community at the time. Lots of Americans there who commuted over to Findle. But I lived with them, and they were like a mother and father to me while I was up there, But it was drink, because they were, they loved the hooch. Like it's sort of like you was in the gang. Like you go to Alcoholics Anonymous or something like that. It's just a great place to meet people, because alcohol is totally, it has no prejudices. Alcohol,
right?
In fact,
Universal.
It affects everybody. And it's funny to say it. And there's a positive side to everything. Like I went to an AA meeting in Australia, not that I needed to, but it's a good place to meet people. And I met two drummers, a guitar player, and a stand-up comic, and an harmonica player who I got to become friends with, and he was also a part-time artist, and he set me on the trail to become an artist myself. And I spent some time as an artist running a gallery. I've done a lot of things in my life, but I think it's because I was meant to, because I've got to understand people of different walks of life, many people, in order to teach them.
And that brings me back to the idea in what we've been discussing in our Zoom calls, is that the realization that Holy Spirit has usurped the ego script, and that the ego script's written one way, but Holy Spirit is in charge of the ego script now for our awakening. And that brings me great solace and great comfort in the knowing that that these things like the alcoholism or the abused child or whatever it might be, these dark things that are in the consciousness of the ego, when they are now being brought forth to us, it makes us stronger, because we see them for what it is, and then we can let them go. Because how many life cycles have we been stuck in those very same cycles? The trials and tribulations are being shown to us again by Holy Spirit and Jesus for us to witness them, say, I don't want this anymore. And then that great golden light, like you were talking about, you're like, I've learned that lesson, is it going to show up in some other form or fashion? Absolutely. But you know what I mean? We're chipping away at the ice block, we're slowly getting the truth, undone, or unhidden, from the guilt. And I love hearing your side of things in that fashion, because I've had my own trials and tribulations, but they might be a little bit different subject matter. But I can also grasp onto aspects that you're talking about, because I've had alcoholism in my family that I've had to forgive and let go. I haven't actually experienced myself, because it actually turned me off from it. I was like, kind of like, I don't even have it in the house. And that's not even a judgment. It just didn't touch me. Did I have my own other things that I needed to let go? It was money. Money was a thing that scared me.
Yeah, money. Well, I can say this about alcohol, though. It's been used as an example in individuals. Like, you could ask one person, why don't you drink like yourself? Well, because my parents are alcoholics. Yeah. So ask another person, why do you drink? Why? Because my parents are alcoholics.
Right.
You get what I mean? I've come across both sides of that.
Across both sides, yeah.
And that's, I suppose I know it's the ego grows out of your experiences, experiences and events since birth, which forms you, your character, your personality and character. But there's certain genetic factors in there as well. Like it's the sort of like the built, because your brain is like an onboard computer in a biological machine. I mean, it's like this, the body is, it's not part of us. It's a vehicle that we use to move, to get about in a three-dimensional world where everything's split into objects, elements, and beings. This is how we navigate it, but once we're not in it and back in the unseen is everywhere, isn't it? The unseen is absolutely everywhere. And once we become part of the unseen, we're everywhere. It's only here when we become separated into this, really, we're everywhere. There's an interesting thing, someone in Canada, because I get sent conspiracy stuff. They don't stick it on my page, but I get posted stuff like that because they want my opinion, And I try to sort of like keep it as positive as possible, but one of them's this, a girl who apparently does remote viewing, and she was talking about vaccines and stuff like that. But it was something else she said in one of her videos, because I became interested in this girl. She's obviously got some kind of some psychic talent. And she said that before we began to think this is real, like before the tiny mad idea, she doesn't use this phrase. She uses her own phraseology, but this is what she's saying. She said, before the tiny mad idea, we weren't solid beings. We were sort of like fluid. We're kind of like, we weren't like we are now. It looked like we were now, but we weren't as solid as we are now. We're sort of kind of fluid beings, And a reason why she said that, I'll just quote this, because she said that the Queen of England is a lizard sort of thing. But I'm just saying this, for example, not to discuss conspiracy stuff, but she said the Queen is a lizard and she moves between lizards and humans because she keeps a fluid, because she's in a kind of fluid nature. Then she said, this relates to going back before we began to think that this was real, right? Before we entered this matrix, before then, we too had this fluid thing because we're actually one. And we weren't as solid, we only consolidated into these individual forms when we thought that this was real. So actually she wandered off into that. That was a bit, I mean, I've heard about the Queen and the lizards and all that, but I don't want to discuss all that. But what she wandered off into, that bit, really tied in with the tiny mad idea. Because us being fluid, what's the first thing you do when you love someone or you greet an old friend? You hug them and try and pull them into yourself. Now, if you were fluid, you would go into each other.
Sure. So
it's like we subconsciously know that we could do that, but we can't do it, but egoically says you can't do that, but you still try.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's trying to demonstrate love you've done by trying to pull yourself towards the other person. And when you get like it's an enjoyable and a satisfying thing to do is hugging people. Another thing, when I used to, back in the old drinking days, like I never hugged any mates or anything like that. None of the people I knew were huggy types. Far from it, in fact. But these days I hug all my friends and they all hug me, and it's just a life of hugging. By the time I got to Australia, in the drinking days, I didn't know practically anybody who didn't drink. But by the time I was living in Australia, I didn't know anybody who did. Not to excess. Because I wasn't projecting them anymore. And I didn't,
you weren't projecting
when I got into the course, I began to realise, in hindsight why things really were. Yeah. And explanations of things that made no sense at the time suddenly make sense. I love that. It's a discovery of yourself.
Exactly. Something that was brought up when you were talking about the liquid movement, or the, even the Christ mind, that we were one mind.
Yeah.
Me and Stephen have spoken about this quite a bit. But some of the, I guess, books that I've read or things that I've listened to, I came to a realization about the Adam and Eve story, and how we were one in the garden, and of course that was in God's mind. We knew we were one with God, And then Adam fell asleep. And then, like, as you know, that, you know, Adam never woke up. In the Bible, he never woke up. And Adam and Eve were created. And I thought this was such a wonderful metaphor of the truth. But when they hid in skins, that was when we hid the body. Before that, we didn't have bodies. So it wasn't like loincloths. It wasn't loincloths like Tarzan. It was that we put the egoic body on top of ourselves to hide. And that was what the skins were, if you go back to like the translations of what that actually meant. And I always thought that was so fascinating, and it made so much more sense to me what that meant. Like, you know, a lot of people are, oh, they're ashamed to be naked. It was, no, they were ashamed and they hid in the ego, which we just read this in our Zoom call about what is the body in the workbook lessons, that section there, and how the body's a fence, you know, when it's coming from the ego, and it's also the home of the ego. So that made so much more sense that we were some sort of light being in Adam and Eve. One, you know, and another thing that, you know, Adam's asleep in the time that Eve was created, you know, so the separation of a female male, now we have two, and then of course it splits off from there where, you know, she did that, no, he did that, you know, and then they have a son and your two sons that then of course he did that, and then they kills the other son, and then like you said, the split and the split and the split and the split and the split, you know. But yeah, that oneness and that, you know, just the body aspect, I think is really been a theme going on for at least our talks for the last couple of weeks now, and with the COVID stuff and all that's happening right now, it's a good theme to be looking at, you know, because that way we can let it go, you know.
Yeah, and also Adam and Eve is a perfect example of separation, man and woman.
Right.
And we have to come together to create. To create, we have to sort of become one again. To create something else, we can't do it separated. We have to do it as one. These little clues are there all the time. You know, I think even like butterflies and caterpillars are a great little clue. I mean, a caterpillar groveling around, trying his belly, trying to do this, that, and the other. Then it goes to sleep, and it comes out. It's, you know, it's I think like because as it says in the book, like there's the afterlife, it teaches us to reach the oneness where we come from. It also it doesn't say it, but you realize it after a while, because it says, when it says you this will save you many incarnations. So it hints it hints at reincarnation a few times in the book. But what it is, it's that the Hindu thing. There's no sort of like any kind of, I don't believe there to be any kind of like first you're an ant, then you're a moth, and then you're a frog, and then I don't think there's any of that kind of going up the scale kind of thing. To do with people, it's you just keep you go into it. This is an illusory life. So there's illusory afterlives. You know, it's like when people die and they see their old granny. If they see their old granny, the old granny must still be separate. If everything in the afterlife is still separate like it is here, then you're not home. You're just in another life.
Right.
It's like in that book of Seth thing I've been reading, because the course itself doesn't teach you about. It doesn't talk about the illusion. It says it's an illusion, so I'm not going to talk about it. I'm trying to get you home. Well, I've been reading a book by Seth, who's a really, really good, someone recommended it to me, and he talks about these illusionary afterlives and how they actually work. And it's logically, so there's no time there. I just mentioned this. There's no time there. So when we say I had a former life or a future life, there's no former, past or future life. They're all happening at once. Yeah. They're all happening at once.
Yeah.
So that's and you could slip into one. And some of your dreams, apparently, you're actually observing or taking part in some of these lives to a certain extent, but you don't recognize it. You know. Mm-hmm. So anyway, whether that dreams, but it fascinated me to get an insight in whether it's illusory or not. While we're here, we see it as it is. So if you go to another afterlife, it's a creation of what your mind is here anyway.
Yes.
You know, so a kind of it's projection of your mind. So some of these people have been doing this, well, have been perceiving them to do these evil things. If that's so, whatever place they go, illusory place they go afterwards, can't be very pleasant if it's a reflection of their minds. I don't know, unless they like that kind of thing. But that shows but then again, it's another one of the great perils of this egoic world. Yep. It's so, you know, it's bottomless. I mean, it can separate into all sorts of things. If it can be imagined, it can happen eventually. When I was a kid, all the things I sort of like. I used to love Tom and Jerry, right, when I was a kid.
Oh yeah.
I used to love Tom and Jerry. And I said, I wish I had a machine where I could take Tom and Jerry and watch Tom and Jerry when I felt like it.
Right.
Well, many years later, the video camera appears. You know what I mean? And then start watching Star Trek. Cool. I wish I had a thing like a phone where it goes like this and this, that, and the other.
Oh yeah, totally.
We've gone past that now. Star Trek's now. We've gone past Star Trek. They're flip top phones. They're outdated.
Yeah,
yeah.
Absolutely. Yep.
We got a smartphone. You're old. Yeah. But everything I'd like thought about as a kid, I would have liked to have happened. It has sort of happened. It eventually projected.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I'll tell you something.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
I just want to say this one thing. I tend to talk a lot. I'm sorry, but anyway, but this.
No, we love it. Trust me, we love it.
When I was into conspiracy theories, I spent a couple of years into that, and I dug really deep, and I learned a lot of stuff that I presumed to be going on. But what I really wanted was everybody to know about it. I wanted to understand you're in danger. You're in danger, but they wouldn't listen. They would not listen. Well, after a couple of years, when I found A Course in Miracles, I abandoned all that. It's just the dream anyway. And I carried on. But over those 2 years, I was projecting a huge worldly view, right? I worry about the whole world. When in my world, to project something of that size, it's going to take quite a while for it to form around me. But what's happening? Everybody knows about this conspiracy stuff, or at least talk about it. Whereas 10 years ago, there was very, very few.
No one was even talking about it.
Yeah, very, very few. And now they all know about it to a certain extent. Well, going by that, if that's the case, that it took that long for my projection to reflect back and very slowly build, all the Course in Miracles stuff I've been putting out for years and years is now starting to reflect back on me. The old conspiracy stuff has come to a head, like it did with me, but now it's when I changed over to Course in Miracles, my projection now is beginning to rub that out. I'm meeting fellas like you. I'm doing lessons online. I'm talking to all sorts of nice people, and it's my life is becoming just lovely, joyous,
and lovely,
joyous, lovely, joyous.
And it does when we connect with Holy Spirit, we become a part of the atonement, and it can be an instant moment instead of that long, drawn out, gonna manifest the horribleness, over a 10-year period. When we connect to Holy Spirit, boom. It's like Jesus and Holy Spirit are just hugging us, saying, "You're on the right track now. Come on, just keep on walking. Keep going, And during something as dark as this, here we are speaking the truth and seeing everything in love, no matter what the world's going to tell us. And it's almost laughable, some of the stuff we're seeing on the news. It's like, is this real? I mean, I sometimes I'm just like, what? Who wrote this? Like a really bad sitcom.
It's a bad joke. Yeah, it's all getting out of hand. I know it's been like, there's a guy called Gregory Tucker. He's a psychiatrist from San Diego, and he regularly comments on my stuff, and we get a banter going all the time. He knows the truth. He knows, but he's really grassroots. Look, we're in a dream, and that's it. And he takes everything to be he takes everything as a big joke. Everything's funny to him. Sometimes people who don't understand what he's saying make some posts that are not altogether complimentary. But he always gets round them by saying, but he gets round it by seeing the joke in everything. Even that's funny, you just said to me. And I made a video about this a couple of years back about jokes. You can tell the most terrible, evil, disgusting story you want, as long as you say beforehand, this is a joke. Now, those words take all the emotion out of it. All the pity, emotion, and everything is then removed from the story, and you can see it just without prejudice what it is. And if this could be about murdering people, but as long as you've been told it's a joke, you might even laugh your head off at it. And this is what Jesus is saying in essence in A Course in Miracles. Once you realise that this is a joke, no matter what's happening in it, it's funny, and that's what Greg Tucker says in essence.
Yes.
I mean, it seems like the idea of laughing at someone in a concentration camp's funny, but the very idea of getting somebody sticking in the camp and murdering them all in horrible ways, why? We're supposed to be human beings, and what sort of joke is that? But you feel the pain of the people suffering, you think, oh, that's not funny. But if you tell it as a joke, there was these people in a concentration camp and he sat there, and it's got some punchline, you'll laugh because all the pain and agony's all been removed by that single phrase. And if you can, and that Course in Miracles is that single phrase put into a book teaching you that this is a joke. before you enter into believing it. Yeah, you know.
And Jesus says, we'll be laughing at it all. We'll laugh, and we'll laugh away the tiny mad idea that we could even be separate, you know.
Yeah.
And how cool is that? I mean, you know, it's like, and when you see the process of when you do let go something, that monster under the bed or in the closet,
oh yeah,
and it's not there, you know, the next day that you've forgiven something, and you know, that person that you know, the ego's trying to get you to separate from, you call them up and they're like, I wasn't even thinking that at all. You know, I mean, you find the truth is told to you when you investigate some of these things, and the boogie, you know, that monster wasn't what you were perceiving at all. And you do that over and over and over, and that's when the joy starts showing up, because your true self is starting to shine through. And
you see it as a nothingness. It always was. You see it as a nothing, like you're referring there to like monsters under the bed and all that. Like I think everyone as a child has thought there's something under the bed or something's in the wardrobe or all that.
Yeah,
I mean, they've actually played on that in some horror films, actually, like the idea
Sure.
of something being in the wardrobe and all that.
Uh-huh.
But it shows you it's a world of fear. Why would you think there's something in the wardrobe? It's a kind of a fear world that you have to get on top of all the time somehow. You know, it's really, I don't know. I read this thing once when I was talking about who had the real life. Like if a man was born into a very wealthy family, didn't have to work, did nothing all his life except lay about doing what he wanted to do, playing games until he eventually died. Did he have a good life or a bad life? Because he never experienced life, really. All he did was just, you know, was it a good life? When you think of it now, you've got to sort of like, I mean, I've had some hard times, you know, but I look back on, and if I didn't have them hard times, I wouldn't have appreciated the good times because I wouldn't have understood them. I wouldn't truly understood how good they were. I mean, when I get back home to oneness, I mean, I'll really, really, I was going to say I really appreciate it, but I'm appreciating it now, being a part of it, you know. I'm so glad that the Course of Miracles give me that doorway, because without that knowing, am I? It's like, I mean, I've got my own views about COVID, this, that, and the other. People have got a certain view about it and they won't change it. You'll come and you can see that it's not what it's supposed to be or something like that, what I'm saying to them. But they won't. They want to create their own fear. They want to be scared. And I don't know why that is. But then again, I think it's just a further aspect of the old guilt trip here. Like everybody suffers these guilt things about something that happened in the past. When the past comes up, like for some reason, your mind will interpret and find a bit that makes you feel guilty for some reason. Do you know what I mean? But But what makes it so hard just to say, just don't think that way, is because you've got an inbuilt thing that makes you feel guilty for not feeling guilty. Well, I should be feeling guilty, you know. I should be feeling guilty. Why should you be feeling guilty? But it's sort of like guilt sort of reinforces itself. That's what psychiatrists are all about. Getting someone to stop you feeling guilty. And they like, I can't stand it. My head's doing me. But basically, it's all rooted in guilt, something they did a while ago that's bothering them, or this, that, and the other.
Sure.
When Jesus says, forget the past, I mean, it's not like, you must have come across this one as a teacher, like people say, you're saying, like, what about forgive everybody? What about paedophiles and all this business? How can you forgive them?
Yes.
Well, it's a point, it's how you view it. It doesn't mean walk up and shake them by the hand. It means like you realise that what happened didn't really happen. It happened if you see it, but give him the charity that he doesn't know. You know what I mean? I've got to forgive him that way. I know I know it's illusion. He doesn't, but that doesn't mean I don't condemn what he's done. Into the sense like, you know, you shouldn't do that, brother. But I'm not going to get myself into a heated anger because that doesn't do me any good at all. And
in what's I've spoken to this several times in some of our past calls, or even just with one-on-ones. But when you do get into those dark places, and I still have a ping about pedophilia or whatever, you know, I have daughters and you know.
Me, I've got sons and daughters. You know what I mean? Don't get me wrong.
you start. No, I know. But my understanding of what that is that we have been everything in the world of separation. We've been the murderer, we've been the victimizer, we've been all these things throughout the progression of the separated self.
The ego gives you a go at everything. Go on.
Yes. So when we're seeing this in this world and it's like, this really hurts, it might not have happened in this lifetime that you were that thing. but you know, we're getting the chance to forgive it and see the Christ through that person, you know, no matter what. You know, that person is this villain for me to look and let go. It does not mean I need to join with them. It doesn't mean I need to go, you know, hug them in that moment, but I can hug them in my mind, you know, and let it go. And that's all dark things of the world, you know. Pedophilia might not be the thing. It might, you know, be abusive father. It might be something that you have done. It might be, you know, all these different things that the ego is pretending to be. Yet, you know, there are these great gifts now, since Holy Spirit has the, you know, the whole dream in its hands, that we can see these things for what they are, and that's false, and let it go. And that's letting everyone out of the jail, you know.
What a great,
even that pedophilia.
What a great facility that is.
Yeah,
I mean,
it really is.
I'm so glad I found A Course in Miracles, because it suits me. It suits me. I mean, I've expanded into Advaita. I looked into Advaita, like, you know, because the way they teach is through analogy, and they've got some great analogies, like the snake in the shed. Like the snake in the shed isn't really there. You know that one where you go, the guy goes to his shed at twilight, and he opens the shed door, and there's a snake in there, and he goes, slams it, and he runs off and gets his mates, and they all come back with torches and clubs and get this snake, and he opens the door, and it's just a big coil of rope. Well, like,
right.
God, what a relief. Yeah, but for a minute, that snake, which wasn't there, was real to those people. And all the fear in the world is that snake on that rope. It's not really there.
I love that. That's a great analogy.
Isn't it? And Advaita's filled with those kind of analogies. And the guy whose book, Dennis Waite, it's called The Book of One, and I read it, and I wrote to him, Dennis Waite, and I wrote to him, emailed him, and said, like, you know, can I use some of your ideas for videos, because they're just so apt for what I'm teaching. He come back, he hadn't heard of A Course in Miracles, funny enough, and he said, he said, I had to ask somebody about that. He said, but I got really good reports. So
great.
He said, so yeah, use them. So I got his permission. Great. And I just elaborated on what he said and stuff like that, you know. But that was Advaita. And I looked at the Indian masters, like Ramakrishna. Just looking at their quotes, you don't have to go into sort of like whatever their lifestyle and where they lived and what their childhood or anything like that. What they say, because there's so much in it. And I went, you know, the stuff seems so impenetrable to perhaps the layman. But once you understand A Course in Miracles, it doesn't seem impossible. You know,
even the Bible starts, you're seeing the duality aspect taken out, and you can go, oh my gosh, this meant that. And, you know, even the Ring of Fire, you know, Holy Spirit showed me some things in like the original translations of that fire that we're thrown into. And it, you know, I don't know the exact quote right off the bat, but especially in Revelation, where it says that everything will be thrown into a fire, from some of the understandings, or where I was led to read, was that in the original Greek, it was actually a chalice instead of a ring of fire. And the chalice from the Greek was where they took gold and they would refine it. So, you know, you were put in the, you know, say the soul is put into a refinement state, which I believe that we're in right now, is learning the truth. And the impurities are being burnt out of us. So the gold is becoming pure and pure. That changes everything from the Course of Miracles standpoint, because the revelation is you know, when you become when you realize revelation is speaking of your own awakening, that, you know, the 7 seals that are broken, or the 7 chakras, and all these things that you're like, I didn't understand what the heck any of that meant. But, you know, you would have to go through the letting go of famine, war, pestilence. You know, those are the things that we have to let go in this world to finally come to the real, you know, to the realization of who and what we really are, which is in heaven. And all that being symbolic and all that stuff was, you know, just uplift. You know, it's neat to see it with Holy Spirit's eyes, some of these things that made no sense whatsoever, or even the interpretations that are thrown outside of ourselves when we start listening to kind of an ego perspective of what these things meant, you know, instead of actually going inside and looking at these things. And it's a neat, really cool. It's cool to come from that place.
It is. Incidentally, talking about mistranslations, I came across one sometime, but there's a guy called his name escapes me, but he translated the Bible from its original Aramaic, He bypassed the Greek. I didn't even know there was a version Aramaic, but he retranslated it. And there's parts in it which he said were translated wrongly in the Greek translation. And the main one was Jesus saying, it's easy for a camel to go through an eye of a needle. Than a rich man to get in the kingdom of heaven. But in the he said, but in Aramaic, he said rope and camel are the same word. He said, so to say it's easier for a man to go, a rich man to enter heaven than for a rope to go through the eye of a needle. A rope somehow makes more sense than trying to shove a camel through the eye of the needle.
Yes,
I mean, they've come out. I mean, since then, I've been told that the entrances to these the walled cities were very narrow, and a camel would get stuck. And apparently, these were called needles. Okay, that might be so. I don't know, but that makes a lot more sense to me. And that's one of, that's one of his main points about his retranslation, was that there's little things that aren't quite right in the Greek translation. That's one of the main ones. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, Stephen, I hate to do this. I've got to go pick up my daughter from school.
You said earlier you've even got a bit past your time. I was going to say if you got to go.
No, I just want to say this, though. I'd already been led, and I didn't even know what we were going to talk about today, but I already knew that we were supposed to have several of these conversations. I don't know how you feel about that, but we'll have a part 2, part 3.
I've got lots more to say.
Okay, good. Me too. Yeah, this has been wonderful. And, maybe Stephen Gable.
Maybe I'll say something.
Yeah, maybe he'll say something.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Maybe next time we can get to know Stephen Gable. So, yeah, it's so funny. But, hey, Stephen, this has been so wonderful, buddy. I
really enjoyed it. A lot of fun. Really. Great
from the very get-go, when I saw your videos, I just was like, man, I gotta talk to Stephen. I knew that you were my brother. And I love your teachings and how, your style or your flavor. And I just want to know more, man. Even you say you speak a lot, but I love it. And I think, doing so, we learn so much more about ourselves. So I appreciate you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate you too. I really do. I really enjoyed it. It's a lot of fun. We'll do it again.
Good,
just send me a link sometime in a week or so or something. And
okay. Yeah. Let's do it. All right.
Great.
I love you, brother.
Love you.
Bud.
Love you both.
Okay, man.
I'll see you. Bye. See you.
All right. Bye.
Going now.
One more quick thing, guys. I hope you enjoyed that. I just wanted to give some information about Stephen Dean, or I don't have that much, but he does have a YouTube channel called The Truth Connections. So Stephen Dean, Truth Connections on YouTube. You can also find Stephen Dean on Facebook. I'm sure he would love for you guys to connect with him there. And just enjoy his videos. So we'll see you guys on part 2. And I hope you guys have a wonderful, spirit-filled day wherever you're at. Where I am right now in time, it's about 3 days until Christmas. And I know we're enjoying it here with my family and with you guys. So feel free, if you enjoyed this, to please leave a like, a share. You can hit the bell so that you'll get notifications the next time we upload a video. But we love the connection. Stephen Gable and I call it the joining. So, when we're joining minds, we are joining on that level of love, and we get to walk home together. So, okay, guys, once again, peace be with you. I love you guys, and I will see you guys on the other side. All right, guys, take care.
Prepare yourself from the birth to the dirt. Prepare yourself for all it's worth. Prepare yourself from the birth to the dirt. Prepare yourself, the last ego on earth. Prepare yourself from the dirt to the birth. Prepare yourself from the birth to the dirt. The last ego on earth.